Hello and welcome to Sweet Omagh Town Internet Radio, and I'm joined as usual with my co-host Declan Ford. Hello, Declan.
Hello? Hello?
I don't know how this is going to work or not because I'm in one room. You're in my garage.
And it's cold, it's freezing, it's untidy.
And there's mice. How I know there's mice, I put a pair of rubber gloves that I put in the garden the other day, and I out to lifted them, and the little fingers are missing.
Good Lord.
Poor mice hadn't a bite to eat in the garage, so they had my rubber gloves. So don't you eat them?
Do you know one of the strangest sights I ever saw? Do you know the three blind mice? You know that old nursery rhyme?
Yes, very well.
I happened to be over a number of years ago in London, down in one of the underground stations, and you would see the coal down among the tracks. And I thought, that bit of coal has moved. And the more I looked at it, what did I see? Little black mice with no tails. And apparently the mice in parts of the underground in London are blind because they're living in darkness all the time. And also their tails have been removed by the trains just go slicing the tails off. That is absolutely true. It was like a hologram, you know, or those kind of tricks that you would see where you look at something and then you imagine that they play tricks with your eyes.
Yes.
There are certain colours like I think reds and greens, and then once you actually see a shape, then the whole shape seems to magically appear, and that's what it was like with the mice. And
who told you this, Declan?
But
Come
that's
on.
Absolutely true.
I know lots of things you tell me are absolutely true. They're absolutely rubbish now. Come on,
would I tell a lie? Well, I don't know now. Well, hopefully I don't see any little rodents at the moment, but
oh well.
A little rodent could appear in Sweet Omagh Town.
Well, I'm sorry. This is the only way we can do to keep it a safe distance, so that you're in the garage with a long microphone cable. And it works, I think. We don't see each other, but I can imagine what you're wearing. How's that now?
Yes.
We should sell ads. We could say, Declan is wearing his nice green barber coat and his Doc Martens.
Oh, yes. I always had a certain elegance about me, you know. But I tell you, would need the barber coat today. It's bitter cold and I am sick at heart, as Shakespeare says. It is cold.
It is all that.
But we're getting into the autumn and it's great to see the leaves turning brown.
Yes. And I think people are still seem to be very stressed over all this craziness, isn't it?
Yeah.
But I have a good feeling we're well through it. I'm on my own with it.
Well, that's
theory. But it is a theory that I think we're on the home straight now.
Yes. We'll get there.
We'll get there, I think. This too will pass. Who said that originally?
No, that's right. No, that's a conundrum. This too will pass. Mm-hmm. You know, but we're looking down that long road. It's like Liam Clancy used to tell the story about when he was at school. It was bait into them, by the school teachers to get a job with a pension, the pension, and you'd be a teacher, a civil servant, get a job with a pension. And he thought, for years the pension. And he says he imagined his life. He said there he was looking down this long road, and he says there at the end of the road, there it was, the pension. And that was your life. You would walk down the road to the pension. He says the only problem was, he says, just beyond the pension was death.
Oh, for God's sake.
But we are, I think we are in the home straight. If we're not, we'll imagine that we are.
Well, I think you have to do what Viktor Frankl did. Viktor Frankl was the famous German psychiatrist who survived Auschwitz.
Right.
If you haven't read his book, Declan, please do, and I'd ask anybody listening, if you do anything in your life, if you ever feel sorry for yourself, read Viktor Frankl's book, Man's Inhumanity to Man.
Right.
In it, he says, the Germans took everything from him except his thoughts and his mind, and that was his reason for survival. He said, every morning he got up and he had no piece of broken glass, and he would scrape the beard of his face and got out and looked fresh-faced, and then he says he was fit to work to give him soup. And then if we give him soup, he would survive. And that was his thing. He's seen survival. He's seen where all the people seen despair and desolation in his life. He's seen an end game. And that's pretty much his road to survival. I'll not tell you much more about the book, but it is an excellent book. Seriously, leaving all joking aside.
Right, very good.
When people do feel bad, I know people's businesses are melting and their way of life's disappearing. and they feel very stressed about it. But when it's all a matter of context, really,
Well, that's it. I think it's getting your head around it, And if we're talking about books, I'm just finishing a great book. This has turned into a book club.
What's wrong with that, sir?
Well, it's called Jumping the Border. And anybody from Drumquin out there who's listening to this, get it as a Christmas present for a nearest and dearest. It's written by the great Seamus O'Cahoyne from Drumquin. And it talks, in it, it's an autobiography up until probably the late 1960s. And in it, Seamus talks about growing up in Drumquin and going to university, and then his experiences in Lapland. And it's a riveting book. It is just full of little nuggets. And it's a book that I'm delighted I got. It's called Jumping the Border.
Excellent.
That's my recommendation to you.
Right, that's your book, right? When you finish, can I have a look at it? Or we'll swap?
Yes, but I'll
there's a butt here. Here's the butt coming out.
I'll have it on a long piece of string.
Oh, you miserable swine. You who took my sewer rods and never brought them back. I've accused everybody that I know well.
It's bound to be somebody out there who you know who you are. Return those sewer rods.
Yeah, if somebody I know very well, because I never remembered who gave them to who I gave them to, and that's the reason. That's why I know somebody I know very well, but not you, sir.
Absolutely not. I wouldn't take your sewer rods. I wouldn't need them.
Oh well.
Not a bit.
Such a conversation to have.
Well, anyway, what are we doing today?
This is let's see what it is. Do you know they say behind every good man is an even better woman?
Oh yes. Indeed, I know that old saying, yes. Yeah. And there's a certain truth in it.
And our lady guest this evening will be the late and great Mary Chester.
Oh, yes.
Wife of the late Bobby Chesters and mother of Pat Chester, who we know very well.
Yes.
And it's just a conversation I had with her. You were not there, Mr. Ford.
No.
I don't know where you were that day. Probably
in short trousers.
It was probably early mid-90s it was done. Right. I have a funny feeling some of those days you were unable because you had I think you were teaching A-level art at that time or something.
I was indeed, yes.
Sure.
Yes.
And you put your career first. I just stepped out of my job and did it.
You
But no, I don't think you were there. So you'll not know what it's about. But it's a lovely story. Just she grew up in Omagh. Actually, she grew up in her earliest memories were in the Gate Lodge belonging to the Monaghan estate. Mm-hmm. Which is, or for people who don't know, would be where the Fermanagh Omagh District Council, where the Grange is now, I suppose. That was part of the Monaghan estate. And she remembered the soldiers, actually, that must have been after for the First World War, running with the bayonets.
Yes.
And then at night time, they said they would sneak over and then steal these life-size dolls full of straw and stuff,
Right. Ooh.
What but a lovely childhood. You remember the first radio ever coming in and hearing it for the first time and being mesmerised with these things. But her family home and Chester's home was always a great open house. Mm-hmm. There's people always coming and going all the time because with Bobby's involvement in the band and the music scene and stuff. So one of those houses that was just like a good kiddie house.
Oh yeah. And I seem to recollect that we interviewed Eddie Chester's about pearl fishing in Greencastle, is that
we did indeed, yes, we did. And I'm going to try and drop a wee piece of him talking about his early days as well, just add some colour to this, I suppose, for want of a better word. We have so much to do, Dag, I don't know when we're ever going to get it done, of these different interviews and things. Some were longer than others, some quite short. But he did remember pearl fishing up in Greencastle, and then they went over to Fermanagh, somewhere maybe a 5 mile town, or Brookborough, around that area. So.
Did he talk about a flat bottom boat with glass at the bottom of it?
No, I think, I'm trying to remember because it's a long time ago, I think they used maybe the old biscuit boxes they had years ago.
Oh, yes. That's right.
And they would get a biscuit box and it had a glass bottom.
That's right, and then they could peer through it. It was almost like I suppose, like the reverse of a periscope.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, needs must. And when people do that, isn't it great when people can see a use for something, utilise it and move on.
And I would bet you there are people out there listening to this who never realised that people used to fish for pearls in Greencastle.
Yes.
In County Tyrone, imagine that.
Yes, up by Mcaleer's up in there. I remember that. Yeah,
I
remember. I think there was a documentary, maybe many years ago on TV about it as well. I remember there was one of these sort of local documentaries that UTV would have made, or ITV in those days. But,
Tom Sweeney told me a great story about a gentleman in Omagh that he was engaged in conversation with a friend of his in John Street, and it was the anniversary of Pearl Harbor. Pearl Harbor.
Yeah.
And this certain gentleman came along and eavesdropped on the conversation. And when Tom's friend left and went away, the gentleman turns to Tom. He says, Tom, tell me this. Who was this Pearl Harbor and what happened to her?
Only in Omagh, Declan. Only in Omagh.
Oh dear,
Oh,
I remember.
gosh.
Do you know, I actually remember. You know Kane's pub? The archway, or the alleyway or the archway beside the late Mick O'Kane's.
Yes.
It's now Daly's, I think, is
The
it?
Monument Bar. I
The
suppose.
Monument Bar.
Right, okay.
And I remember standing, I think up by the courthouse, just looking down, as Shakespeare says, surveying the vantage of the ground. And there was a gentleman teetered his way out of the Monument Bar, and he got to the alleyway or to the arch, and he looked up, and a man came walking round the John Street corner with 3 lion cubs on a lead. And the fella, you could see him doing a double take, and he just pulled himself back and just walked straight back into the bar. I suppose I know that other towns would be pink elephants.
Yes,
But here it was 3 lion cubs.
It was 3 lion. It was 3 lion.
It was 3 lion cubs, yeah. Yeah.
Good.
You know, as you say, only in Omagh.
Only in Omagh. Only in Omagh. But as I say, it's a very nice interview of its time, and it does reflect on Omagh and on the part of Omagh, of course, up around the hill. And I'm always amazed by the great cross-community support that people had in those areas. And I think it was so important because it was a form of structure where people could survive by looking out for each other and looking out for their neighbours.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Oh, there was a great community spirit there, you know, and you know, I used to, when I was in the Brothers, then I would maybe sometimes have the occasion to go up to James Street, and you used to duke across, you know, rather than go down up to John Street and turn to your left, you would kind of cut across there. Is it Fair-view and all that around there? And there's one part of it, it's like an L.S. Lowry painting. It's just the way the houses are constructed, just going down the hill.
Yes.
I think it was up where maybe Charlie Doherty's was up at the top.
Yes,
And it's lovely.
Isn't it?
It's lovely.
Yes, yeah.
And it's a lovely wee walk.
Beautiful, beautiful end of town, and thankfully a lot of those houses have survived. So many, unfortunately, disappeared over the years,
Yeah.
and what's left there are in very good condition, and I hope they hope to keep them there like that as well.
Yeah, lovely spot. I look forward to hearing this now. I wasn't part of it, but I'll trust your judgment.
Do you ever get the feeling you're not wanted, Mr. Ford? Last week we farmed you out and took in Dr. Mitchell. And
Oh, look. So look, there's a mouse. Even the mouse is leaving. That old Les Dawson joke, our house was so old, even the mice had powdered wings.
deadly. Oh well. Anyway, what's your plans now for the rest of the week? Don't say garden.
I don't know. With the inclement weather that we're going to have, no, I'm busy drawing at the moment. Art. I'm drawing images. A friend of mine is doing 15. He's recording 15 songs, and he's in Bangkok, and he's playing along with musicians in Ireland and America, and all by the miracles of modern technology. He's been filmed, and this is all linking together. They're all, you can see them listening on their earphones, playing along with each other. And then at the end of the song, the singer, he sets up the song, tells the story, goes into the song, a piece of music does it, and then what's the last image that the punters will see? It's a drawing by Declan Ford.
That's worth waiting for, isn't it? Tell me, as you say that, would that be a good idea for your little book launch? I don't think.
Well, let the people know. Declan Ford's Christmas Cards. Yes. It's a collection of 25 Christmas poems. I do a Christmas poem every year, and I'm putting the first 25 into a booklet form with illustrations and also a CD. And they will be going on sale very soon. And all proceeds are going to a worthwhile charity called the Little Birds, which is a charity that I've seen their work in Bangkok and run by a force of nature called Father Joe Mayer. So all the proceeds will go to that. Will go actually directly
Excellent.
to that. No middleman at all.
No, we cut the middleman out. Well, then let's see if we can do a Sweet Omagh Town video, or audio and video combined.
Yes.
We shall discuss over the next couple of days to see how we can set this up, and then we'll have a proper launch, and then our little viewers and listeners can decide if they would like to purchase a little book. Does it have a value?
Oh, it's £10. £10, €10, or $10. Now I'm actually sending 7 off to America tomorrow morning.
And postage included or not? Or
The postage will be extra, but the postage.
I suppose £20 of postage or something. Knowing you, up the road to Carrickmore somewhere.
Oh no.
So this is £10 plus postage, which is reasonable, I suppose. It's
Well, it's going. It's a good cause.
Well, I
And-
know-
and there's a limited number, and each book is numbered and embossed, and the recordings are. Well, I'm very, very pleased with the recordings.
with the quality of the recordings or the recordings. Right? Go and give us a compliment, will you, for God's sake?
No
right?
compliments. No compliments at all.
Anyway, it is good. I've heard it because I've recorded it. I could recite them all back to you if I was pushed.
Yes,
But
yes. Well, yeah.
can we let the little listeners hear some of it sometime next week, maybe? Or I don't think. Let me think about it. I know. I'm going to put you on the
Let me
spot.
discuss it with my people.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
But you know what I would think? You see, I think we're too civil. I think we need to be like the presidential debate. Did you see parts of it?
Thankfully, I didn't know.
Oh, watch it. It is. It takes politics to a completely new level. So it was about 6 or 7 foot under. It is
Is it that far?
unbelievable.
Oh, okay.
Civility, courtesy, good manners are words that the two guys would not understand.
No.
It is absolutely incredible. But I think they'd be more combative. I could be Biden to your Donald Trump.
You could be Stephen Nolan. How's that?
Oh no.
Go ahead.
No comment.
No comment there. Right. Okay. Well, sure. We'll work on that, as I say.
Absolutely.
All right.
I like the idea of a sort of an Irish Christmas.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to press the buzzer now, and the roller door will open, and Mr. Ford will head off into the sunset.
me and the mice.
Okay. To see you again. Have a good week, and we'll leave you in the company of Mary Chesters. Bye. What's your earliest memories of growing up in Omagh?
My earliest memories of growing in Omagh was down, you know the lane at where the council offices are, there's a lane there before you go up to them. It was down there at the river. We lived in the house at the gate lodge, you would really call it. It was just right beside the river. That's my first memories of running about with all the crowd from the crossroads would come. There might be 12 or 20, all mixed.
That was known as the Monaghan's Estate, was it?
Monaghan's Estate. They lived in the big house in Lisnally. And of course, we used to get into bother, surely, because there was a Nancy's Burn, they called it, up near the big house, you know where. And down on it, they had a pump, chugged all the time, and bladdered about, for pumping the water up to the house, the big house, you see, inside. We used to put stones into it and stop it. Oh, Vincent used to go mad. My mother, God mercy, used to say, I'm telling you where you should go to end. They're in jail because he had no mercy on anybody. He was very sharp, you know.
Was it a big estate, the Monaghan Estate?
It went right down to Cunningham's of Strathroy. The two estates were together. And then he was an MP, the father, George Monaghan, I think. He used to go to Westminster. And his case with him when Parliament would be sitting. And then they had a son, Ali, they called him. He used to look after the farm. My brother, Johnny, he worked on it. He was a teenager. He worked on Monaghan's farm. But he stopped there even at 5 when it came 5 o'clock. He stopped his work.
Father worked on it.
And my father worked on it too. He was, and Vincent, they used to come looking for him, and he'd be sitting. I always remember he read Blake mystery stories. There was an author who used to hear him. They had all these books. He'd read them, and they used to come looking for him. And Ali used to say to him one day, he says, "John, what? I've been looking for you all evening." He says, "You were supposed to be snapping turnips, and I couldn't get you in the field. And what happened to you?" "Oh," he says, "nothing happened. When it comes 5, I stop work. I work 9 to 5. He says, "That's it." So of course they never could make any harm of him anyway, because he had his own mind.
What about hobbies when you're growing up in Omaha? What, you mentioned playing. What sort of things did you play at that time?
Oh, that time it was skipping and hopscotch and all these old games just among ourselves. There was no expensive toys or anything, or bicycles. If somebody had a bicycle, you would keep on with them to get a ride on it.
I remember talking to someone and they remember the very first radio in Omaha. Do you remember the first time you ever heard radio, do you?
I remember hearing the radio, it was a big radiogram. There was stars as lived up the crossroads of the White House, and there was a sister of theirs came home from America and brought this big radiogram with her, and we used to all get in at night and to stars. We'd sit there and listen to the radio. We thought it was the greatest thing ever.
And what schools did you go to in Omaha? Did you go
I went to the National, as they called it, the Convent National
in the town here?
in the town.
That was run by nuns in those days as well.
It was. Oh, sharpers.
Do you remember any of the names of them at all, or who you used?
Well, there was a Sister Angel, and there was a Sister Kevin, a Sister Patrick, and there was Mother Agatha. She was a principal. And she would have just done it. They had big long pointers, heavy. They would have, you got that battered around your back of your head or anywhere.
And would you say they were happy days, even
We
despite
were
all that?
happy, we enjoyed them, we didn't know anything else. We enjoyed our playing in the fields there run at the crossroads. We used to play in there, and the boys, my brother and the whole squad of them. There was a Wooly McGale up there, his brother, or his uncle, Paddy. He worked on the railway, and the fella worked on it too, Clark. And he always had a football. You see, the boys kept in with him to get playing in there. When he wouldn't get scored goals all the time, he lifted the ball and took it home.
You mentioned the railway there. Do you remember the earliest memories of the railway in Omaha?
Well, and not at that time. We never even seen the station. We never came in. We never came into the town, except we went on to school over the bridge. We used to call it the Red Bridge, down there at the showgrounds. We used to think, how did the people live in the town over the weekend? How did they put in Sunday in the town? Because we had the bogs to jump, the bog holes.
And the war years, do you think did it make much of a change to the town?
Oh, it did. Made a big change, especially when the Yanks arrived. You wouldn't remember how Pat, the soldier, used to come to our house. Your father, he took them all onto his
German prisoners?
No, these weren't the German. This was the Bruce Cox.
Bruce.
He was from Leeds. He used to drive them to Enniskillen, where they were working. Castle Archdale. It's during the war. And he spent the whole day up in Castle Archdale cutting blocks, and he brought them home to it. We had, do you remember the coal shed that was out in the yard? It was just packed with blocks that Bruce had. And he kept in touch with us for ages. And then we went over to see him one day. We got football tickets for your father.
Tell me about your mother. Your mother used to give the young soldiers.
Oh, aye, they used to wade the river over. You see, we lived just beside it.
That's when you were a cully now, but
Aye.
them the lads was going to fight in the 14-18.
They were.
Yeah.
Right.
And
crossing the
they
river.
used to practice. They had dummies.
In the army, they shooting.
Okay.
Right.
And shooting, would be shooting them, practice them.
Sure.
And then we used to wade over.
No, they waded over.
They waded to my mother for salt.
Salt.
They never got salt on their food.
My God.
And the soup, they said, it tasted awful without the salt. Used to come every morning for
Well, maybe a
salt.
lot of them lads was killed for all you know.
Oh, I suppose so. And then we used to when they would be finished practicing with these dummies, they would be post thrown on the field. We used to wade the river over and take them back with us. We played with them.
That's terrible.
And But then they used to, the pretty young, young fellas, Mrs. Monaghan herself, Angela, nobody ever called her anybody Angela, she was very prim and proper. She went to Mass, 8 o'clock Mass every morning. She'd be walking home, and the soldiers would be over on them, just across the river. And they started to whistle after her. And my mother said one day to Johnny, she says, who do you see? She says, there'll be a queer way about this. They'll report them. So they did. Vincent reported about the boys. They weren't doing any harm, they were whistling at her.
The American soldiers, do you remember them coming to town in the Second World War?
Aye, well, that was later on. Pat was growing up. But I remember the fella, Bruce Cox, that he used to spend a lot of his time in our house, and then the word had come that the American soldiers were coming to be based. And he said to Bobby one day and me, we were sitting all night, he says, you may thank God, he says, your daughters are small, school-going age, because he says there'd be bother when the Yanks arrived with the teenagers. So there was.
Was it bother?
Oh God, you go down the street, you go to the pictures at night, they were based in the courthouse, and then some of them were out at the castle. But the ones in the courthouse, they would shout after, whistle.
And it was a novelty fact that these strange men were in town as well.
Actually, they had plenty of money, you see. They used to take the girls to the pictures and buy them chocolates and all the rest of it.
Right.
There was quite a few of them got married too.
Was there a few married men?
Kenny Crane's sister married one.
Yeah, that's right. She's up in
She's living in
and
Sligo.
Sligo.
Oh, sorry, she married a German prisoner of war.
He was a prisoner of war.
Right.
And she married a German prisoner.
Right.
They live up there in Sligo. But then there was a girl Morris lived up, you would remember it, Pat, up on Gallows Hill. You know where Paddy McPhillips lives?
Father Morris's.
Father Morris's.
Aye.
His sister.
His sister married
She
one.
married one.
He finished up, he was Canon Morris in Wales.
Aye.
He was a Canon, he finished up at Canon.
She went away to America, love, but then there was some of them, I don't know what to be. The day as they called them, the GI brides, Bobby London, that would be a cousin of mine, he's dead now. They were all over watching them going to the train. The GI brides was going to America, and there was a girl lived out the Callan, out the road there. She was Ward, the priest, Father Green, aunt, and she was terrible thin, thin. And I mean, Bobby London says to me, he says the Yankees is going to get a shock when they see the GI brides coming from Ireland. He says, you'd think they were refugees from someplace. But they were never heard tell. Some of them was never heard tell them again.
A lot of them were conscripted as well. I think a lot of them, moved on.
But
and you said they were based in the courthouse in Omagh, were they?
they were. The courthouse, that's where they were based, and the castle.
Knocknamore Hotel.
Knocknamore.
And do you remember it as a house, Knocknamore? The Knocknamore house. You remember the Campbells living there? And
Oh, I remember the Campbells, they lived in it, sure.
who was there before them, do you know, or to?
It was Stack was there before them.
He was an army man, wasn't he?
He was Dr. Stack, they used to
Oh,
call
your
him.
doctor?
He was connected with the army.
Then
And then there was some connection. I think he lived in that house too. There's a house on the left-hand side.
I was going to ask you, that's the house where Louis Kelly lives in now.
Kelly's living
The
in
big Georgian house. That was
Yeah.
that was Scott, was it?
No, Stack.
Stack.
He lived there.
At the tan yard, more?
No, above the tan yards.
Oh, above it.
Yeah, just on the left-hand side
right,
when you
right.
go up into the bushes. But then there was some, what was it? I used to hear them saying. There was somebody hanged themselves in that plantation there, and they used to say the ghost was in the castle. Nobody would stay in it. And then somebody was the report that the ghost was buried down in the bottom of one of the fields that run along the bottom. But nobody was very fond of going around that way at night, anyway, whether there was a ghost or not.
There were many ghost stories going up in Omagh at that time. Lots of superstitions.
At that time, down by Catholic Church there, they used to say, they used to tell these yarns at night, and I think it was more or less to scare the life of me. They used to tell about down at Dickie's, they lived down there. They were, he was a barrister or something. They had a family. But there was a man in our house used to tell about he seen the coach coming down the avenue and the horses had no heads on them. All that. We believed it.
What sort of businesses were in Omagh when you were growing up? Do you remember the shops and who owned them?
Well, Crawford and Wilson's was there, and there was Lyons's, where the paint shop is today. He sold the paint. He had groceries and everything. And then opposite him on the other side of the street there was McMullen's. That's where we dealt. It was a grocery shop and a pub. The grocery. Mullen.
Jerry Mullen was.
Jerry Mullen. Michael, his father, was. He was a terrible cravat man. The bar was down this side, and the grocery was at the other. It was all combined.
Spirit groceries, just
Gallagher's, Mcaleer he had a shop beside them. And Swan and Mitchell's was there too.
What about Davy Young was in there?
Oh, Davy Young, he was there. He was a legend. Oh, he was further down.
Yes, that's down near where the Heinz's is somewhere right there.
Just a couple of doors above Heinz.
He's a bit of a prankster as well, I believe.
Oh, he was, Davy Young. And then there was Peter Mcaleer, they used to call him Sloper. He had a bicycle shop. He used to hire out bicycles for the weekend at half a crown. We used to hire them. He'd spend most of the weekend fixing punctures the whole time.
And did he keep the bicycles parked when
outside, just on the footpath?
That's right. And had he a yard or somewhere we used to store bicycles during the cinema?
Store down the entry there, still there beside goes down past Crane's photography place, the back of Crawford Wilson's.
What about Yardies?
Yardies, oh, they were there. They had a big store where the electricity board is. Huge big hardware shop. And then they had the pub on the other side of the street. Johnny McGuigan, he was the barman in it. The mastermind, it's called him.
And
nicknames on everybody.
Had the nickname and the locals?
Everybody locals.
And most people lived above their
They
premises?
lived there. Yeah, they all lived above the premises.
And the cinema would have been the main source of entertainment, would have been there?
Yeah, that's all. There was down the Royal Arms. But then there was the Star Cinema down Sedan Avenue. And then they opened another. There was 3 cinemas.
And all the cinemas, they belonged to the Donaghy family, did they? Or?
No, the Star Cinema belonged to... No, the one on the High Street belonged to the Donaghys. I can't remember who the Star belonged to. That was open till later years.
Probably the who owned the Royal Arms Hotel maybe would have been round, or Porters would
The
have?
Royal Arms owned the county cinema. And then there was a new cinema
Miller's,
built.
Miller's.
Miller's, that was.
That's it.
And then there was a new cinema built down where all the big stores are now. There was 3 cinemas. But you hadn't the money, it was only 6 to get into. You'd be gathering that up the whole week for that, to be able to go.
And was money very scarce, or was there a big division in the amount of money people had, or the class people had?
There was a class distinction, between them at that
very
time.
noticeable.
It was very noticeable. Poor class, they actually had nothing. But
were you aware of that when you were young as well?
well, when you're young, you don't be aware. You just would know. You wouldn't get the things that you would have liked to get, but that was as far as it went. But there were happy days, We enjoyed ourselves in our own way.
Yeah. And for entertainment, what about dances and music and
Well,
stuff?
I was too young for the dances that time. The courthouse was the main place for dances. And then in later years there was the parish, out where the football pitch, there was a hut there. There used to be dances and that, and Cayley's and things. And then there was always sports meetings in the summertime, there was plenty of entertainment and sports and racing, and everybody was interested in it.
And things closed down for Lent, most entertainment those days, did they?
Oh yeah. Well, you daren't mention going to the pictures at home.
At Lent.
Oh, Lent, during Lent. That was that. And then when I grew up, when I got senior at school, there was a whole crowd of us, There was one girl, we were all pally, it would be a bunch, but always keep they're all dead now. She, her mother used to get what they called Peg's paper. It was a novel, you know. It was quite harmless, but you weren't allowed to read it, and the nuns would get you with it. They were really transported you. But she used to save them up, and she would bring them out to us. And I had 4 or 5 of them, and I couldn't know. We were living in garden cottages, just at the gardens. I didn't know where to hide them because I was afraid my mother would get them out and get killed. And in the bedroom there was a fireplace and there was a damper that you could close down and put up. And I put them in behind the damper and closed it down, you see. Nobody would see them. And they were there. And then I would slip it on one night for a read when there would be nobody about them. But I was coming home from school one evening, I met my brother, God mercy. And he says, "You're for it when you go home." Say what you want to do. He says, "You put books onto the chimney to hide them." And my mother decided she would light a fire for the room was cold. He said, "Really burned the house." They all went on fire. So that finished the novel read.
Did you meet your husband in Omagh?
Did.
What
I
age were
was 18. The crowd of Gaelic boys used to hang about.
You were Kelly Clogher supporter, weren't you?
Oh no, I never supported Clogher.
You
I
come
always
from the parish?
And were you married in Clogher Church then?
was married. I was 22 when I was married.
And have weddings changed a great deal since that, do you think?
The wedding was in the house just at home, and they would cook. Somebody would cook maybe a turkey or whatever, ham and stuff. And that was the wedding breakfast. The neighbours came in. Nobody was dressed or aprons on them or anything. There would be a couple of drinks. That was the height of it.
Bit of a party all day.
Party.
Changed times.
And then we went to Dublin for a weekend. Just
Right.
so.
The train? The train or the bus?
Oh, the train.
Not the train.
I don't think there was a bus to Dublin.
No, I thought it was the train.
That was your first trip outside Omagh, I suppose, as a young bride?
Well, was it bright as so far away? No, we used to go every Sunday when St Andrews would be playing outside in town, up in Dungannon. We were up there a lot, in Washing Bay. I always remember every 10 minutes, I always remember Washing Bay when St Andrews would be playing, you know. The supporters, all you could hear was, "Throw them in the bay." You know, I can still remember that. We used to go to the train for the attend the matches, maybe a shilling or two.
What did Dublin seem like when you did it seem like a different world altogether from
Oh,
Omagh?
of course. And we always, still, Dublin was our base always. We always had the flair for Dublin.
What part of Omagh were you in when you were first married?
I was out at the Gusset side, and then we got the house in Railway View, and that was a wreck, just, you know, an old house, but Bobby papered it and fixed it up. We lived there for 30 years, I think, in that same house. It was a happy place to live because you were in the country and you were at the town, you know. Orchard Terrace, they were all beside us.
They were mostly all railway families as well.
They were. We liked it. I would have loved to stay there, but the houses, there was no sanitation or nothing. So then we got the chance of this house here. We moved to it. And it was like heaven upon earth. Like you had a bathroom, inside water and everything.
This is near where the Cow Commons was, is it?
This is
We're
part of the
sitting right on the
Cow
Wayne
Commons.
Bridge. This is the Wayne Bridge. This house is right in the Wayne Bridge.
Is that right?
Right on the Wayne Bridge.
Where the boys paid pension to us.
Right commons, right on top of it here.
Yeah. The sheep pen, or the made the pens.
Cattle pens, we're on
Cattle
the pens.
pens, aye,
That's
we're
where
on.
the houses on the pen.
I remember,
Played his football in the Cub, Beaconsfield.
yeah, that was over there, over the hill. And Bobby's father, he was fond of a drink. He got caught up in the cattle pens one night and couldn't get out, no matter what way he went. But it's changed. The neighbours, as it said in the song, a fella wrote a song about it, you don't need to lock your door if you want a way out that way, because nobody had anything that was worth lifting, or nobody would bother.
And your children were all born at home as well, were
They
they?
were all born to except Pat. He was born in the county hospital. And Sister Brown, she was his godmother. They had to baptise him. They thought it was...
Isn't that Clancy, no?
No, Sister Brown.
Oh.
You know the halfway house down the Derry Road?
Aye, Paddy Brown.
Paddy Brown's
Oh,
sister was
right,
her.
right.
She was the sponsor, just the one. And there was a sister. Her father was from 6 Mile Cross. They were big farmers, and she was awful good. She's got the nurse to ring the parochial house and get the priest up just down below. And got the table ready for the christening. It was christened there. So Dr. Laggett, it was old Barney, as we called him, he came out. And he says, well, he'd often have to say, well, how's everything? I says, the doctor, I says, Pat, so he said, that child had to be baptised. Well, they seen, even the Protestant doctors, seen that they were baptised if there was any danger of death. He says he'll have to be baptised immediately because he'll not live. Anyway, they baptised him, and Barney, he come out, he said to me, says, doctor, he says he's not going to live. And he lifted him up, and he was like a skeleton. Dandy well, he says, he loves Shirley.
And he was right.
And he was right. For 12 months in Georgia, Dandy keep him alive. There was an old lady next door, a Mrs. McKibben. Do you remember her? You remember her?
Sure.
She always called him Paddy. And I dared say anything to him. And I was out one day looking for him. I wanted him to go for milk, and I couldn't get him. And she says, what's wrong? She says, I'm looking for that fella in his way again. I can't. Leave him alone. You've plenty of daughters there. Let them go for the milk. Leave Paddy alone. He used to go in. She would get him to carry things up the stairs for her. You know, she was about 80 at this time, I'm sure, wasn't she, Pat? She always wore black, and the black velvet band round here, you know, at that time was fashionable. And she used to get him into things. And she says, Paddy, I was on the day helping me, she says, do you know what he said to me? He says, you have no Protestant gods. Oh, sweet. Says, I didn't know God. And holy pictures, you see. Well, then the next one he got a bit bigger. I used to have to not dress him on a Saturday, Bob, I said, because he used to go away, you know. The granny came up with him one Saturday, he was about 4, I suppose. And she says, do you know where he was? We thought he was over the back of Archon Terrace playing. You know where he was? Greencastle. He was sitting at the YM, and that's where they boarded the bus. And he got on the bus too. And went to Greencastle, and they all got out at Greencastle then. And this woman, the last one to go with the bus driver, he was what we loved over the rope. He says, Missus, you forgot your wee fella. She says, it doesn't belong to me. And he said, who owns him? Well, I don't know. She said, he got it at Omagh. But there was no bitterness among the people then. We played with the Hamiltons. We didn't know what religion they were, where they went on Sunday or whether they went anywhere. Didn't interest us either. Johnson the painters, they lived there. Cloggy. And then Blacks, they lived up in one of the big houses. He worked in the jeweler Orrs, Edmund Orrs, the jewellers. And they were all good neighbours. They never mentioned religion. You went to your place of worship on Sunday, and that was all it was about it. And they went the 12th of July, they had their parade. We used to all go to see the bands and go home again.
And you didn't feel threatened at all?
No, you didn't. There was no threatening. Just felt as one of them. But he used to parade with them at one time. The first Sunday in July, the Orange Men all went to church. There was a service for them at 3 o'clock in the evening. And there was people living there on Church Hill, you know. But there was Kavanaghs living in the end house right up at the top. And I was talking to Mrs. Kavanagh. She was a South woman. She says, I was sitting yesterday evening, she says, on the chair, just watching, she says, and the Orange Men all came out from the service. And she says, I nearly fell apart, she says. So anyway, She says the first one out along with him, she says, I'm marching along, was Pat. He was a cub. He was at the service too. So he marched with them down the street and went away and played. And he was annoyed too. There was no, it wasn't like he says. He was telling his father. He says, you know, that church up there where I was today, it's not like our church. You know, he says it's not the same. There's no big, lovely, big pictures or nothing. He says he was always after the Protestant gods.
Your husband was Omagh family as well.
He was. He
no.
was brought up on the hill. He was born on it.
That's right.
The hill, as we called it.
And he was a painting, always involved in the painting business.
He
as
was
well.
always. His father was a painter, and his uncle, and he was. And then Pat, he was the next generation of painters. And another cousin that's in England, he was a painter too.
Where did his interest in music? Was that always in the family as well? Or?
No, his mother used to tell me about when St Eugene's band started up. He was at school, and she found out that they were looking for members. And he used to tell me, he says, when I came home from school, my mother said to me, listen, boy, you go down to there was a church down in Brook Street,
Old chapel.
the old chapel they call it. You go down to the old chapel tonight, she says, they're looking for boys they're starting up a band. And he went down, and that was the start of him. And he was in St Eugene's band till he died. He loved that band. And you see, they had no funds, and one time it was very nearly closing down altogether. And then this fellow, what do you call him, Keaveney, he wasn't interested in the band. They had to get out of where they had their band room.
That's the old manual room up with the brothers.
They had to get out of there, and they had no place to go. And then they got into Culmore School, old Culmore School. And they have done that up, made it comfortable. And the next thing they got was the army. A fella that was married to one of the McCall girls, Michael Reynolds, and he made a band of it. He was marvellous with them.
A lot of people, the boys in the shoe bands, cut their teeth in the.
And that's
Eugene's
where they
band as
started
well.
too,
That's right.
biggest part.
That's right. I remember talking to quite a few of them now. That's Ray Moore and.
Good tradition now with the band.
That's
sure.
right.
They used to have their band room down there in the Labour Hall. That's the way, of course,
Yes,
they
of
were
course, I
down.
remember that.
Him and Brian Cole, every practice night, they stood up at the gable up there, the houses, and pelted the stones off the tin roof when they would be practicing. But Bobby, one night, he used to come out to run them, and he'd come out onto the commons, you see, and they would see him, and the two boys, they would clear away. But this night he decided he'd go up the other way, and round behind them. They caught the two of them. Brian Cole says he nearly paralysed me.
At the end of that carry on.
At the end of the stone throwing.
Would you say changes in Omaha have been for the better or the worse? If that's maybe it's not a fair question to ask you, but
Well, I think it's for the better. The people are better off. The children have more. They have more entertainment, and they have, well, a lot more than we had or Pat had when I was growing up.
what sort of employment was about in Omaha maybe in your early days? Do you remember what was it work for women at all, or was it just mostly for men?
Yeah, what they called the White Work Factory was down in Irish Town.
What was
I
that?
don't know where. You know when you go down, when you go round onto the Crebner Road, that's where it was on the left hand side.
Done stores is.
Dunn Stores is built on it.
What
now.
did they make? Was that a shirt factory or something? Was it, or a,
It was ladies' underwear, and so all the girls that were eligible for work at that time, they all worked in the White Work Factory. That's all the factory was. Oh, and there was a laundry. Monaghan's owned the laundry. That's down, you know, the entrance at Mcaleer's
Henderson's.
butcher shop, no, Mcaleer's pub.
At the back of it, where BT
Way
is.
down there. That was the laundry. There was quite a few employed in it. And then they had a cart that used to go out round all my brother worked on it. Out round Beara, 6 Mile Cross and all the sponsors. and collected laundry and brought it in to be done, and then he would go back with it, deliver it at the end of the week. And then of course there was a pawn shop down there in John Street, and the people, suits would go in on Monday and be taken out on Saturday.
Who owned the pawn shop, do you know? I can't remember.
It was open, but I can't remember her name now.
And they would give you cash to carry on or something?
Yeah, you get maybe half a crown or
Mm-hmm.
5 shillings, that would do you the whole week.
When people like yourself, had you any business going to the bank to borrow money in those days at all?
No, you didn't know anything about the banks.
That was
In
for
fact,
preserved for the few, just
Oh,
was
I had a few. I mean, the wages weren't big, so, but the people just watched and didn't get into debt because they were always afraid that they'd never be able to get out of it.
There seemed to be a better community spirit in those days with neighbours, as you said about, I mean, when the children were born, people come to the house to help out.
Oh yes, they always, the neighbours would come in, they would cook for the family and do the washing. Even in Eileen's time, Pat, do you remember Mrs. Eccles?
Yeah.
They were Protestants, but as soon as baby would be born, when she'd hear it, she'd be in, take out all the clothes with her, and mind you, there was no washing machines or anything, and done all and cooked for whatever children was there. You had no worry about them being left hungry, which the people now would be more reserved. Like they wouldn't.
People are afraid now to get involved in people's domestic affairs.
That's what they say.
There's supposedly this sort of welfare state. Do you remember the
Yeah.
welfare state coming in? Do you? And
I remember it slightly, just, but didn't make much difference to me for years. When you don't have a house of your own.
you know,
Don't.
you've been talking to me nearly 50 minutes.
Is that right? Ever felt the time pass?
It's a marvellous interview. I appreciate it.
Well, did I
Marvellous.
help you anyway?
Great. Delighted to get it now, indeed. Bobby Chesters, you're the current president of St Eugene's Band.
Yes,
You have records of St Eugene's Band going back as far as 1876.
yeah.
Why has the band survived, do you think? How has it been so successful?
I don't know. My own opinion is that you get boys, including myself, who was always interested and try to keep it going. There's been attempts to squash it way back, maybe 4 or 5 occasions since it was formed, but it always rose up again, you know.
Has it been
Since I came now, there's been no. It was broken about twice, but it was reformed again since I joined it.
Why has this band stood the test of time and so many bands have fallen by the wayside, do you think?
Well, as I say, you put it down to the few that's always interested, and most of them are gone. They're in that. Some of their names are there, Michael, show me. There's a fellow called Ted Pritchard and a fellow called Frank McCrory. There was a master, Martin Mcaleer. There was a Mick Hayes, and there was Brian Turbot, and that takes us up to the present conductor, Mike Reynolds. Between now, it is broken from Brian Turbot to Mick.
Do you remember what year you started the band yourself, Bobby?
1928. At that particular note. Yes, 1928.
Who taught you the rudiments of music in those days?
There was a Frank McCrory, lived in Castle Street, in the post office.
That's the same Frank McCrory who was responsible for a lot of the pantomimes and things.
Exactly the same man, yeah.
What instruments did you learn to play at that time?
I played a French horn.
And still today, you still play French horn?
Plays a bass now, bass, yeah.
Do you take part in many marches and things at all, do you?
Oh yes, all functions connected with the church, the coming of the bishop for confirmation time, plus public engagements that we get, you know, sports, different projects connected with money making for different organisations, you know, in town.
Well, Eddie, could you tell me a wee bit about pearl fishing in this area?
The Drumrah. The Drumrah was a great place for shells too, so it was. It was full of shells, but they dredged it. They dredged it and they killed every shell in it. And that finished the Dunraw for pearl fishing.
But when did you get involved in pearl fishing? When did you first
Oh,
go
I
out?
must have been only about 13 or 14 years of age, I suppose. And we used to travel to a 5 mile town on bicycles.
Over the years, when you were growing up in Omagh, could you tell me a wee bit about pastimes when you were a young fella? The kind of music you listened to, the
Oh, aye.
entertainments?
Frank McCrory, remember Frank the musician, Frank?
There's a clarinet there.
Well, Frank, he was married to one of the Brogans in Cattle Street, and he lived in their house, and he was teaching me the piccolo up in the bed, up in the top room, and I learned the piccolo and all, and was learning the piccolo, and he learned me to play the Irish Washerwoman, the Lakes of Mallow, and the Irish and the Irish Washerwoman, and then breaking until da 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 da. So when I was here, it wasn't an old picture house. It was tuppence sitting there, tuppence to get into the picture house that time. Do you know the old picture house down the entry where the tail is? The old arms, that used to be the old picture house. And you went in there for tuppence or tuppence sitting there or something. So when I was here, wasn't there a programme on by the public, by the
Town contest.
contest for all instruments and persons playing the instruments and all this business, and there was musicians and first class musicians of all kinds, organ players and everything, and there was a girl, Evelyn McInhill, she used to play the piano for me when I was playing the selection. So the man called me out, Master Edward Chester shall now play the piccolo solo. See? So, and I went to the clapping of the public to win the prize. You see, went to the clapping of the public to win the prize. So I played the Irish Washerwoman, run into the Lakes of Mallow, and here I got the claps and all, and here a man called out, Master Edward Chester has now got won the competition, and he'll now pick a lovely watch for the selection. So we held out the big plate of watches for me to pick out. I didn't pick it out, he picked it out. It was an old dud.